I'm going to leave the house to my parents. If you oppose that, we're getting a divorce. What in the world is this guy talking about? While I am drowning in sorrow after losing my mother, Dan comes up to me with a smirk on his face and drops this bomb. And then, I realize that I've lost all affection for him. Instead, a surge of anger towards Dan and my in-laws started to well up inside me. Fine, but you're gonna regret it. Shut up, idiot. He hands me the filled-out divorce papers with a stupid grin on his face, not taking my words seriously at all. If that's the way he wants it, I'm more than ready to show him just how serious I am. I won't let him get away with underestimating me like this. Grinning maliciously, I take the divorce papers and leave the house. Where to? My uncle's place. The next day, accompanied by my uncle, I made my way to the mansion now occupied by my in-laws' family. Where were you yesterday? You can't just up and leave when you're the housekeeper. Housekeeper? Who are you talking about? Who else but you, the wife? I already got a divorce, though? Dan is stunned into silence by my words. At this point, my uncle steps forward. There's something I need to discuss with you as a lawyer in light of recent events. My name is Emma Thompson. I'm a 35-year-old working housewife. I don't have a father. He apparently passed away in an accident when I was very young. As a result, my mother had to raise me all by herself. My mother, a skilled businesswoman, built a huge corporation from scratch all on her own. To make sure you never struggled because of money, especially since we were a single-parent family. I want you to live a long and happy life, Emma, for both me and your father. That's what she always used to say as she worked tirelessly. Thanks to her, we never had to worry about money. Hey Emma, big sis, I was in the neighborhood for work and thought I'd drop by. Oh, that's tough, working even on your day off. Yeah, it is what it is. Oh, by the way, where's that heavy package you were talking about the other day? I can help you with that while I'm here. And my uncle, her brother, would also help us out during his busy schedule, so we never really had to struggle. But the rule in our house was always to take care of your own business. You work for what you want. Mom, can I get a part-time job? There's something I want to buy. Sure, I don't mind. What do you want to buy, though? A book for a certification I want to get in the future. Oh, Emma, you really are such a good girl. So I never shied away from putting in the effort. And my mother always praised me for it. And as a result, today I hold a managerial position at my company. I fell for you at first sight, Emma. And watching you never stop trying just made me fall for you even more. I met my husband, Dan, at work. He approached me proactively, and I eventually fell for his enthusiasm, leading us to get married. We don't have any children, but we've been living a normal life together. One day, I had to work overtime because a meeting dragged on, and I came home late. I'm finally home. I'm starving, hurry up and get the food ready. When I got home, Dan was just lounging on the sofa, fiddling with his smartphone, not even greeting me with a welcome back. I couldn't help but sigh at the sight of him. I told you I'd be home late today, so go ahead and eat first, didn't I? Oh, did you? I definitely told you, and you even replied that you understood. Whatever, just hurry up and get the food ready. Dan continued to lie on the sofa, saying this. Unlike me, he doesn't hold any position at work. He's what you'd call a perennial employee. I always tell him that I want him to do more housework because of this, but he never lifts a finger. He leaves his clothes on the floor where he took them off and doesn't even try to clear away his plates after eating. When we first got married, he used to care about me and actively help with the chores. You know, I've just come back from work and I'm tired. You, on the other hand, have the luxury of lying on the sofa, so at least get your own food ready. Stop nagging. As if you could have kids. At those words, I snapped. It's true that we don't have children. But it's not entirely my fault. Both of us have bodies that make it difficult to have children. That's the same for you as well. It's your fault. We can't have kids because your body is defective. Despite this, Dan always blames it all on me. Perhaps he feels his pride is hurt because I have a position at work and he's not progressing in his career at all. In other words, he's just jealous and taking it out on me. That has nothing to do with this. If I'm defective for working and doing house chores, what does that make you? Who does neither? What did you say? Are you mocking me? That day, we ended up fighting. Feeling sulky, Dan went to bed without eating anything. I was left holding my head, unable to understand his actions. I've worked so hard, and yet. I muttered to myself while warming up some pre-made side dishes. The next morning, it was a rare day off with nothing to do, so I got up later than usual. Dan's not here, huh? He's usually sleeping till noon. He's probably gone to his parents' house or something. Thinking that, I got ready and headed to the hospital. Mom, I'm here. Oh, Emma. Are you off today? Yeah. How are you feeling? Same as always. My mother had collapsed at work the other day and is currently in the hospital. Knowing her, she probably felt unwell before she collapsed, but ignored it and continued working until her body couldn't take it anymore. Even now, she must be feeling unwell, but she's working from her hospital bed. What about you? How are you doing? I'm fine, really. I replied with a smile to my mother, who was asking with a worried look. I can't give her any more to worry about. You know, the row of the trees in front of the office was beautiful again this year. Want to see the pictures I took? Yeah, I'd like to see them. With that thought, I changed the subject. Then, I had a pleasant chat with my mom and left the hospital after a while. Oh, it's from my mother-in-law. Checking my phone, I noticed a message from my mother-in-law. Honestly, I didn't feel like calling her back, but then she started calling me. Reluctantly, I answered. Where the heck have you been? I was visiting my mom at the hospital. What? You left Dan alone to prioritize your own parent? Her shouting over the phone made me grimace. As expected, Dan seemed to be at his parents' house. His mother was complaining about it. You're always putting so much on Dan. A wife should prioritize her husband. Just because you have a position doesn't mean you can get cocky. And you can't even have children. I wish she'd let her grown son live his own life. Dan always hides behind his parents. It's really pitiful. With those thoughts, I brushed her off and hung up. What's wrong, Emma? You look upset. Oh, hi, Uncle. Are you here to visit Mom too? Something like that. Then, from somewhere, my uncle called out to me. There was a man standing behind him. Is he your colleague? Yeah, he might be related to your work in the future. Let me introduce you. Bob Smith. Nice to meet you. He handed me his business card, and I gave him mine in return. Afterwards, my uncle told Bob to go ahead into the hospital because he had something to discuss with me. So, who was on the phone? Yeah, my mother-in-law. I explained the situation with a wry smile. Dan, who doesn't do house chores and runs to his parents' house whenever we have an argument. His mother, who defends him and insults me for being infertile. After hearing my story, my uncle looked troubled. I'd rather you didn't tell Mom about this. I don't want her to worry anymore. All right. My uncle nodded, looking concerned. I thanked him and we parted ways. Not long after, something happened. Wait, Mom is... By the time I rushed back to the hospital, my mother had passed away. Stunned by the sudden farewell, I just couldn't catch up and was left in a daze. Unable to think of anything, my uncle firmly supported me and took care of the funeral arrangements. All right. With this, the inheritance is all ours. Really, she was the CEO of a major corporation, wasn't she? I wonder how many millions are in the inheritance. The wife's inheritance belongs to the husband's family after all. We can finally say goodbye to that shabby house. What snapped me back to reality was such an insensitive conversation. Dan and his parents were laughing during the funeral. "Get out!" Unable to believe their remarks, I froze, but my uncle kicked them out in my stead. Dan and his family tried to resist, but realizing the surrounding people were glaring at them, they left the funeral venue, hurling insults at my uncle. "Emma, if you ever want to cut ties with them, just let me know." "Yeah, thank you." After that incident, I didn't want to go back to the house where Dan was. So, I decided to temporarily live in the mansion, which was part of my mother's inheritance. This house was meticulously designed by my mother, filled with numerous memories. I planted flowers in the garden to soothe my busy mother, and we played hide and seek in this vast mansion on holidays. Even though she should have been busy with work, my mother always made time for me. Spending time in this mansion brings back those days. "If I'm gone, you can do whatever you want with this house." My mother had said that to me when she was alive, and now I'm thinking maybe I should just. Just as I was pondering this, the doorbell rang. Maybe my uncle came to check on me, worried. Since he used to drop by unannounced when I was a kid, saying he was in the neighborhood for work, I opened the front door without thinking. "Knew you'd be here, Dan." And wow, what a fabulous house! Hey, wait a minute! There stood Dan and his parents. Surprised by the unexpected visitors, they barged into the mansion. Moreover, they brought moving boxes with them, one after another. "What are you doing in my mother's house?" "Your mother is gone, isn't she?" "This is my house now." "No, you're wrong. This house is in my parents' name." My mind went blank at those words. My parents? But it's my mother's inheritance, why would it belong to Dan's parents? "Got a legal assistant friend to change the ownership for us." "What? How dare you do such a thing without asking?" "Shut it. A wife's belongings belong to the husband's family. But hey, relax. We'll keep you as our maid." Saying that, Dan grinned. "The house will be given to my parents. If you oppose this, we're getting a divorce." What on earth is he talking about? Dan, speaking with a smile while I'm drowning in sorrow from losing my only mother. At that moment, I realized my love for him had vanished. In its place, anger towards Dan and his parents welled up inside me. "Fine, but you'll regret it." "Shut up, you idiot." Not taking my words seriously, he handed me a pre-filled divorce form, smirking. If he's serious, I'll show him I'm serious too. I'll make him regret looking down on me. Grinning, I took the divorce papers and left the house. My destination? My uncle's place. What the? They've really crossed the line this time. I immediately consulted my uncle, who is a lawyer. Changing ownership without consent is illegal, and normally impossible. Yet they had a legal assistant do such a thing. "Don't worry. I'll protect my sister's house. And of course, I'll protect you, Emma," my uncle assured me with those words. And we immediately set out to take action. The sadness of losing my mother had completely turned into anger towards those outrageous people. I won't forgive that unreasonable family. The next day, I went to the mansion occupied by Dan's family with my uncle. "Where were you yesterday?" "A maid can't just leave on her own accord." "Maid? Who are you talking about?" "Who else?" "You, the wife." "We're divorced, though?" Dan froze at my words. Taking that as a cue, my uncle began to speak. "I have something to discuss as a lawyer regarding this matter." He looked at Dan coldly. By the way, I immediately filled out my part of the divorce papers handed to me yesterday and submitted them. Including that, as I reported, Dan seemed to be in a daze, probably not understanding the situation. He probably doesn't get what's happening here. "Hey, what's all this ruckus?" Just then, my in-laws popped in, probably having caught wind of the disturbance. That's when my uncle stepped in and clarified that I am the rightful owner of this house, stating firmly that any unauthorized changes to the ownership would be downright illegal. "What are you talking about?" We've got a legal clerk handling all the necessary paperwork. And just who might that be? You do realize this is a clear-cut case of forgery, right? Leaving my in-laws to my uncle, I turned my full attention to Dan, who was glaring at me, realization dawning in his eyes. Don't you dare pull any unilateral moves. Oh really? And who was it that decided to go off and do things on their own first? I haven't done anything illegal, at least. Dan was left speechless by my retort. It's almost laughable how easily he was silenced. I guess that explains why he's never made it far in life. You're infertile, and yet. You always bring that up so quickly, but to be quite frank, you're not in a position to talk. Yes, I do have difficulties getting pregnant. However, there is still a chance for me if I seek treatment. Dan, on the other hand, has been told outright that having children is out of the question for him, even with medical intervention. I might still have a shot at having kids. You, however, are completely out of luck when it comes to holding your own child. That's just... I'll never forgive you for belittling the cherished memories I have with my mother. Dan bowed his head in defeat. And it seemed like my uncle had successfully shut my in-laws up. Pack your things and leave here immediately. And be prepared for what's coming next. Under our icy glares, their faces turned pale. They will regret trashing the house filled with memories of my mother and me, a house they dared enter with their shoes on. My sister had realized that you were going through a hard time. It turns out my mother had noticed something was amiss and had asked my uncle to look out for me, anticipating that I wouldn't want to burden her with my troubles. She knew I'd keep quiet, not wanting to cause her any stress. So she asked you to help me in her stead. That's what I heard from my uncle. Further investigation revealed that Dan and his family had been bragging about their plans to swindle my inheritance the moment my mother passed away. To prevent this, my mother had drawn up a will, entrusting everything to me. She had left the will with Bob, a friend introduced by my uncle. Right here, it states that all of her estate is to be left to her daughter, Emma. And she made it clear that she can do as she pleases with this mansion. It was clearly written in the will that had been entrusted to Bob. Dan's face turned ashen as he heard this, and he started to cling to me desperately. Please, Emma, I'm begging you. I've already sold our house, and my parents' house is gone too. What? Why on earth would you do something like that without thinking it through? It came out that Dan had racked up a significant amount of debt behind my back. And all of it was from spending lavishly at nightclubs. He had taken advantage of my busy schedule to frequent these clubs, throwing money at the hostesses night after night. To pay off his debts, he had sold off both our house and his parents' house. Well, that's your problem, not mine. Emma, but you're my wife, aren't you? I was your wife. Now, you've got two choices. Either face the consequences of forgery or buy back the mansion for $3 million. There's no way I can. Selling the houses had just barely allowed Dan to settle his debts. There was no way he could come up with $3 million. His parents were in the same boat. Watching him squirm, I decided to file a police report. And as I kicked the in-laws out and took stock of the mansion, I noticed several things missing. Some of my keepsakes are gone. What's the meaning of this? That wasn't me. My mom said she wanted to sell the stuff she didn't like. So, it turned out my in-laws had taken the liberty of selling things themselves. Looks like I've got more grounds to sue them. In the end, Dan and his family were left saddled with a massive amount of debt. And I made sure he was properly ousted from the company. After all, I'm the president now, having taken over from my mother. Bring me that idiot wife. In such a situation, the father-in-law stormed into the company. He then went on a rampage, demanding that the damage report be withdrawn and money be handed over, which ultimately led to the police taking care of him as well. What a hopeless parent and child, my uncle and I would say with a bitter smile. So it seems we've figured out who that notorious legal clerk really is. Turns out, that legal clerk was apparently a cousin of Dan's. He manipulated the situation to make me look like a villain, grabbed a hold of my weaknesses to force me into cooperating. Because of this incident, this cousin has been cut off from his path as a legal clerk, holds a grudge against our in-laws, and has been spreading rumors in the family saying I was deceived. They are demons, leading to our in-laws' isolation. So, I've heard it's quite a quagmire now. Man, that family on the other side seems like they've got some crazy blood running through them. Seems like it. Well, they can just drag each other down for all I care. I have no sympathy for them whatsoever, so that's what I thought. So, have you decided what to do with that mansion? Yeah. I've decided to sell it. Indeed, that mansion is filled with memories of my mother. However, it's been tarnished by my in-laws. Plus, that mansion is too big for one person to live in. If Emma has decided that, then do as you please. I'm on your side. My uncle said, showing his support for my decision. And so, I sold the mansion. Luckily, a wealthy individual looking to spend their remaining years in peace quickly bought it. I said my goodbyes to the memories with my mother and left the mansion behind. From now on, I'll be living alone in an apartment closer to my workplace. Emma! Oh, Bob. I heard from the senior, and I came here. I was approached by Bob right after leaving the office. I owed a lot to him for investigating Dan's family and helping me gather evidence. Would you have some time to spare for me? Sure, I don't mind, and with that, we entered a cafe near the office. Thank you for everything, including what you did about my mother. No. I just wanted to be there for you, Emma. Saying that, Bob looked at me earnestly. Surprised, I still looked back at him. I like you, Emma. What? I know things just settled with Dan, and you might not feel the same way right now. But please think about it when things have calmed down. Saying that, Bob gave me his personal contact information. Honestly, I had noticed his actions. But until now, I wasn't able to see him in that way. I'm serious about this, he said, his face turning bright red. At this moment, I found him endearing. Maybe it wouldn't be so bad to get married again. I thought to myself. Sometime later, my in-laws apparently tried to take back the mansion by breaking into it. Perhaps they thought I was still there. However, it was already owned by the wealthy family. Thanks to the various security measures they had in place, Dan and his family were quickly dealt with by the authorities. With their previous criminal record, they were handed a prison sentence. Please, Emma! Help me! I had forgotten to block his number, and just like that, I got a message from Dan. What an idiot. It seems like the in-laws were the only ones who broke in, and Dan managed to avoid trouble by asking around for help. However, he still has debts too heavy for one person to bear. Can't you learn your lesson already? There's no way I'm going to help you. What? We were married once, weren't we? Really, I'm just disappointed in myself for not having enough discernment when it comes to you. I've realized I shouldn't be swayed by you. I need to be more careful from now on. Well, I don't think I need to worry about that anymore. Is that all you wanted to talk about? Emma! Give me another chance to. I'm going to have to pass. Goodbye. With that, I hung up the phone. This time, I made sure to block his number properly. Is the call over? Yes, it's over now. I decided to start dating Bob. We are now engaged. My uncle encouraged me, saying, "This guy is all about sincerity." Bob, I have a hard time getting pregnant, and I'm not young anymore. All I need is you. Besides, family isn't just about blood ties. I genuinely felt that I could build a happy family with him. Then, I talked to my uncle about Dan, Bob, and having children. That's great. If that's what you both have decided, then I'm happy for you. I've always wondered, why do you support me so much, Uncle? Well, it's a promise I made to your father. According to my uncle, he and my father were best friends. He told me that my father always used to say, "If anything ever happens to me, please take care of my wife and Emma." And to be on your side. I see. Besides, you're like a daughter to me. He said with a smile, and I smiled back. I was really glad that he was on my side.
Be happy.
Yes, of course. I made a firm promise to my uncle that I would be happy this time. I can't make him worry about me anymore. After that, I married Bob. We enjoyed our life together for a while before deciding to adopt a child. This kid is my grandchild. My uncle also cherished the child. I poured as much love into the child as my mother had into me.
Because it's our child, we'll be fine no matter what. Yes, we will.
There may be many trials awaiting us in the future. But I believe we can overcome them. I decided to teach the lessons my mother taught me to my child, to be an ally like my uncle, and to convey honest feelings like Bob. That was my vow.